So in my last video, I talked about the overarching idea that you need to put in a lot of work to gain a lot of distance in disc golf, but what I didn't talk about are the specific details that go into increasing that distance. So that means the small changes that someone will make in their form. I can't speak on every single change that someone might make or what would work for you specifically, but what I can do is talk about over the past 2-ish years what I have done to make my form better. So I actually went from 350 feet to 500 feet on my max distance throw over a year and a half. So if you do the math, that's like 100 feet per year, which I think is pretty good. Obviously, I think it'll slow down, but for now, I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I have 8 things that help me increase my distance over that time that I changed in my form, and I want to talk about each one of them today and hopefully give you some insight on what you can do to increase your distance by making changes in your form. Now, these are in no particular order. I just kind of wrote them down as I thought of them, and I don't even think they're even going to cover all of the little changes I made, but these are sort of the 8 changes I could think of from a year and a half ago until now. So I'll start with the first one, which is actually what I used for an example in the last video, which is the reach back. So in your reach back, you want to get a full extension so that you can pull, and if you don't get a full extension, your arm's rigid, you're going to be using your arm to move a lot more than using the rotation of your hips and your core and even your upper body to get the disc moving. You're instead using your arm. So if you look at old videos of me throwing, I actually have my arm bent a little bit on the reach back. It's kind of hard to see because I'm wearing a bit of a baggy shirt, but it's kind of like this, like bent a little bit. So I'm using my arm. What I've changed is had my arm totally extended on the reach back so that I can get that full whip effect, letting my arm be loose but not bent, totally reach back. All right, number 2 is the positioning of your feet on your final step of your X step. So let me position the camera facing towards my feet so I can talk about that. So on your X step, on that last step, a lot of people will just kind of go like this. And that's fine if you're throwing like a hyzer release, because you want to come across your body and come out this way to get that hyzer. But if you're trying to get either a flat or anhyzer release, which you would be doing on a large distance throw, you actually want to maybe come in from the side, and when you step, you'll see a lot of the pros do this, is they'll come, if I'm coming this way for a right-handed backhand, I'm going from right to left, and my last step is actually going to be out like this a little bit, which allows me to get a lot more power and a lot more acceleration through the rotation.
The readout's right here, Anthony, if you want to get a look at what Adam's putting out there. 74. Good turn.
That is a good angle.
Good
too.
turn.
I told you.
He wasn't lying.
I told you.
He wasn't lying.
That is looking great.
Oh my God.
I think we're going to see him. I think we're going to see Adam Hammonds in the finals.
Dude, that might have been further than mine.
Wow.
Number 3 is pretty simple, but it can be easy to forget when you're focusing on a lot of different things, and that is a full follow-through. I think when trying to throw max distance shots, especially out in a field like this, and I'm just going for the biggest distance I can possibly get, the one thing that I think of the most is getting a full and complete 100% power follow-through. What I mean by that is, a lot of times, once the disc comes out of your hand, you're kind of done with everything, and you don't think that much past it. I mean, there is the follow-through of the body, which you have to think about, but that's going to come from just having good form. But a lot of people will kind of let their arm go like this, and then that's about it. When I'm doing a full max distance throw, I am making sure I'm swinging my arm as hard as I can all the way through the motion, and you want the full power to extend to like here, because if you're trying to only get to the point where you release the disc, you're naturally usually going to lay up a little bit. You're going to let up a little bit of power as you're getting to that release point. But if you think to keep that full power all the way through the swing, you're going to be hitting sort of the apex of your power right when you're releasing the disc, allowing you to have a lot more speed on your release. All right, number 4 is using your off arm to help you. This is a bit more of an advanced one. I wouldn't really worry about this if you're trying to work on a lot of these other ones, but this is one that I've started to work on very recently, and I think it helps get a little bit more torque and keep all of the rotation more compact within my entire throw. So if you watch a lot of, and this isn't true for everyone, like the off arm thing is a really small detail. A lot of the pros do it, but some guys have a slightly different form. The general concept is you want it to be tight to your body, so when you rotate, you don't have this mass hanging out here. Because if you know anything about physics, if you have a mass hanging out here like this while you're swinging, it's going to make you rotate slower, sit on a rolling chair and spin around in circles, and put your arms out and then keep them in. When you pull them in, they're going to go faster. So you want to keep your arm tight to your body. Before you get to your arm to the side, you can have it out as like an off lever to keep everything balanced and kind of get that reach back to be good. I think a lot of the times I was having my arm be out here while I was reaching back, which just like brings my pecs together and keeps everything in here really closed in. Or when I'm doing that reach back, so when I'm reaching back here, I kind of want my arm to come out here, right? So let me try and get the right angle. If I'm going this way, I want my arm to come out here and then come in as I release instead of being here, because this is closed off. You want it to be open. So keeping it open and then coming in and then following through with your body, you want this arm to kind of be in concert with the rest of your body. You don't want it to be fighting against you. So a lot of the times I would come in and I'd be like this. And you see my arm starts here and I want it to be tight to the body, but it's fighting against that reach back and I'm like crossing my arms against each other. I want it to be out here so my whole body opens up. Okay, number 5 is throwing nose down. This is a thing I had an issue with for quite a long time, especially when I was first getting into throwing big distance. When you're trying to throw far, you're naturally going to want to throw up into the air, because if you want to throw far, you can't just throw a laser beam straight in front of you. The biggest distance throws are going to be way up in the air. I mean, if you watch the world record throws, they're pretty much throwing like at this angle almost. But because of the wind and because of the disc they're using and everything, it does end up coming out nose down. And again, this is another physics thing. If you think of a wing of a plane, if you're nose up, you're going to be getting lift. And if you get lift, it's going to slow down and then eventually drop. So when you see your disc go up, drop, and then hyzer out at the end, that means you're throwing 2 nose up. So you actually want to get it to come up and finish out nose down. And as it's nose down, it's actually going to pick up speed at the end of the flight. It's not going to be as fast, obviously, as when you release it, but it's going to continue to pick up speed as it's losing its altitude rather than picking up speed and then dying out. This is kind of hard to do, but just try your best to either keep the disc flat or slightly nose down, but still throwing sort of at an upward angle. It's hard to describe, and it's a lot easier to do with an anhyzer release, but it's pretty important for keeping the disc going at a high speed to continue gaining distance as it gets, way out to the 300, 400 foot mark. All right, number 6 is one that you could see in my first throws that I did quite a bit, and probably into the first year of me playing disc golf. And you see a lot of guys who can throw kind of far, maybe struggle to get past that 350 mark doing, and that is going sideways instead of going backwards. So in order to get that reach back that you get with this step here, what a lot of people will do, knowing they have to get to this point, their run-up will actually include like this back facing, where you're almost like backpedaling when you're going into them. And since we're talking about the feet again, let's angle this down a little bit. What you want to do is keep your body, if you're throwing this way, you want to be facing at most perpendicular to the target. You don't want to be going at it facing like this, because then you're going to have to do a bit of rounding to get everything to go the right way, and you're just going to lose a lot of that fluidity in the way you are releasing the disc. One person who's really good at this is Corey Ellis. He pretty much lines up totally perpendicular to his target before he throws, and I think that's a really good person to model that after, at least in terms of having your body be facing the right way when going through your run-up. So again, the wrong way to do it would be to do this, and the right way would be this. You can see how it's a lot more smooth, and my body is able to get through the whole motion a lot easier with my body facing just this way and not angled backwards, because the backpedaling, you're losing a ton of power, even though you're getting your reach back a little bit easier. All right, number 7, and this is one I struggle with still a little bit, but this is going to be leaning into the shot, and my model for doing this the right way would probably be Casey White. If you watch Casey White when he throws a max power shot, he kind of leans into it like this, like he leans over the disc. It's kind of an extreme example, but it's a really good example for what I'm trying to get at here. Is what a lot of people will do is they'll be kind of straight up and down and almost like lean back a little bit, or kind of just be lazy with it. And I still do this a lot, but if you want to get a lot of power into your shot, and if you watch like AB, Casey White also does this a lot, but AB does it really well, or just watch any of the guys throwing these max distance shots. Thomas Gilbert does it pretty well as well. They're kind of leaning over the disc a little bit, because if you're standing straight up or you're leaning back a little bit, you're going to be losing a lot of power because your body's way too open, and you're just not going to get power in like this sort of like open throw. But if you're in here, you can really explode and get your whole body, your hips, your legs, everything involved in leaning into the throw and really getting into it. Now, I'm not saying you need to be like super down and like throwing these weird hyzers. And another one, Kevin Jones. I mean, if you watch him throw his, like flip ups and grenades and stuff, he's really leaning into it. So if you want to throw with a lot of power, you kind of have to lean into it a little bit. And that also goes with throwing it nose down. You really want to put your body into the throw and not just let your body rotate and just let go of the disc without incorporating a lot of things. And it's difficult. It's a lot of things moving at once, so it's easy to forget to do that. But try to look at yourself and compare yourself to some of these pros. They really are leaning over the disc and really putting their whole body into it. And the last one, this is one that I struggle with a bit, being a bit shorter. I'm like around Paul McBeth's height, so not quite like an Eagle or Simon, who are like 6 foot plus, 6'5", whatever, big germ, is stepping too far. So let's bring the camera down to my feet again. So on my final step, when I'm trying to get a lot of power, oftentimes what I would do is start way over here, and my last step would kind of look like this. And if you look, if I'm like 6'5", this might be an appropriate distance for my feet to be apart, but I'm actually giving up a ton of power and a lot of balance by having my legs. I have geese flying over me right now. So I'm actually giving up a lot of power and balance by having my legs this spread apart, because something that I learned in like playing hockey when I'm younger is if you want to get into like a good hockey stance, if your legs are like this, it's going to be really easy to knock you over because you're so spread apart. You can't possibly be focusing on strength. You're more focused on keeping yourself balanced. Where if you're more in like a shoulder width stance, you can really get down and stay tight and keep everything sort of like a powerful stance, which is what you want when you're throwing a disc on a max power shot. You don't want to be doing these big, huge reaches. And it's easy to think about that when you're watching all these super tall, lanky guys throwing like this. But if you're like me and you're shorter, don't try to reach your leg way out here, because you're thinking, reach really far with your arm, also reach really far with your legs, because you're giving up a lot of balance, you're not getting as much power. If you want to throw a big shot, just be like maybe a little bit more than shoulder width apart. So it's going to be kind of like this. Like this is as far as you have to go. You can kind of reach, you could step more out this way, not like this, but more out this way if you want to get more of a reach back, but you don't need to be way up here. Just right back here, so you have enough power in a strong stance, you can get your reach back, but there's no reason to be stepping all the way out like this. Just right here is fine. So those are my 8 tips that help me throw further. I mean, that took a lot of time for me to get and figure out all those things. I'm not saying they're gonna work for everybody, but I think a lot of them are probably common things that many people who are trying to throw far are gonna have to work on. I wouldn't be surprised if like 50% of people watching this video have at least half of those that they need to work on. So I think this is still helpful, despite the main thing being looking at your form, figuring out what you need to fix, and then going out and doing that work. Knowing what needs to be worked on and what possibilities there are for changes in form is actually pretty important as well. I hope this was helpful. I hope you can get out there and start throwing bombs as soon as this weather gets nice. It's like 31 degrees, maybe 30 degrees outside, so it might not look like it, but I am freezing right now. So I'm gonna get inside. I'll see you guys out in the course. Peace.